Are you looking for the very best products to protect your digital privacy? Well, Silent Pocket has everything you need with their patented product line of high-quality Faraday bags, backpacks, clutches, and wallets. Visit silentpocket.com today and receive 10% off your order by using discount code SHAREDSECURITY. Welcome to episode 115 of the Shared Security Monthly Show. And joining me this month is co-hosts Kevin Johnson and Scott Wright. Welcome back to the show, guys.
I love the fact that that was singular co-host, but two different people.
I noticed that. I noticed
yeah,
that.
I like that one.
It's like
As
we're
somebody
connected
who,
as a
I was
Borg.
an identical twin brother for a very long time. Yeah, my brother and I were always considered the same person.
Yes, you're all one and the same.
Yes. So there are two co-hosts, Tom and the other guys.
and it feels like I just talked to you guys because maybe we did
less than 24 hours ago, I think. If I'm doing the math right.
But this time it was Scott's Scott had the issue with the computer. And last time it was me that had the issue with the computer, because if you've listened to the weekly show, my computer crashed in the middle of the podcast, and so they just kept on with the show. So
that means next week my machine's gonna have problems.
Oh.
Okay, we'll find out.
Maybe it's a prediction. We'll see.
I don't know. I'm still not confident in my configuration on this thing, so we'll see if I'm still a problem child.
We'll find out. But before we get into this this month's episode, I wanted to call out because I know our fans like checking Kevin's background all the time. And you will notice on the YouTube, if you're on the YouTube channel watching this video, that there is a new Star Wars costume. Yes, behind costume. Kevin.
I wear it. Yeah. It's a Gamorrean guard.
Yeah.
And you can figure out how to spell
that. So be sure to check out the video and send Kevin comments because he loves comments.
Have I ever told you about the time I wore this to the zoo for the special event?
No.
So,
I've never heard that story.
So when you wear the mask, when you wear the costume, you have to black out your eyes, right? Because your skin will show through in the mask.
And that would be weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the Gamorrean, it's green that you use around. So like this much of my face is green. Okay. So we do this event every year called Zoo Lights, and it's in December. And it's nice and cool, and the Gamorrean is great. This one year, a couple years ago, we had an event that was in August. Now, if you don't know this about Florida, August is significantly hotter than December. And
makes sense.
Kevin, being an idiot, thought, hey, last time I did this, it was nice and cool. I'll wear the Gamorrean guard, which is latex, foam, leather, fabric, latex, fiberglass, foam, right? Top. So I went out, I put the suit on, and the event, it was actually really cool. They closed the zoo, and then an hour later they reopen it, but specifically for kids who are disabled, terminal, long-term sickness, and their families. And then they bring all these people like us to come out and entertain. Like, they can take pictures with the Star Wars characters, stuff like that. It's amazing. The zoo does this. And so I was there, and I was standing around for a couple hours in the suit, and I was just dripping sweat, right? Like I thought I was going to die. And heat stroke and stuff like that is a threat in these suits. So we try to hydrate, we try to keep. But I hit the point where I was done. There was no way I could do any more. So I went, and where we were standing was all the way across the zoo. So I walked all the way back to the place to get changed, got out of the suit, and then went back to help. But the problem was I'm an idiot. And like you spend 2 hours in the costume or 4 hours in the costume or whatever that we do. You get used to kids getting excited that you're there, people looking at you because you're in the costume, and you try to interact. Like, hey, how you doing? That's great. And not thinking about the fact that I was no longer in the costume, and I now have green makeup running down my face from having sweated through it, right? People are obviously staring at this weirdo wearing, right? Because you wear shorts and a t-shirt and the makeup. And people are staring at me, and of course, in my head, they're staring because I'm in the Gamorrean guard costume, which is awesome. So I am now the creepy, green-faced man interacting with random children as I walk through the zoo. It was not good. I made it about halfway back when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not in the costume. Stop interacting with these kids. I like it
Oh
was,
no.
yeah. So yeah, I'm not that smart. So
But you're smart enough to be a co-host on this podcast, so
well, maybe I don't set the bar very high.
We'll let anybody in.
yeah,
Yeah, you guys
anybody.
let me in. So.
Yeah. So so this month, the topic, and this is, I don't want to be morbid in any way when I start talking about this topic, but I think this is something that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, and you hear about it occasionally. But essentially, what happens to our social accounts when we die? Um, and I think that is a question that you can really ponder on, and it's something that not only would affect, well, you when you die, because we all know that there's two things that are inevitable in life, which is death and taxes, of course. But when our loved ones or family members die, what happens to their social media? Because as you know, we are all consumed by social media in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether we choose to or not. Our friends and family members may have accounts. Maybe we're not on Facebook as an example, but they are.
Yep.
So we need to start thinking about, what does this mean for their legacy and our own, but also, what happens, and just thinking of like from Facebook and Twitter and all the different social networks, as we'll talk about in a minute, they all handle them quite differently
Yep.
across the board.
Yeah. The thing that I'm, because let's be very clear, when I cack off, I'm not sure I care what happens to my Facebook account because I'm dead. And, I have a belief in the afterlife. Yeah. I have a belief in the afterlife, but I don't believe that the pearly gates let in Facebook. And so
not your hundreds of fake accounts, I'll tell you that.
they have very good fiber access to the internet in heaven. That's what I've heard, because that's like
they have the latest stuff, man.
Yeah,
latest
great.
tech. Oh yeah,
yeah, and you don't have to pay for streaming services. You just get Paramount Plus and something. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Ink Master lately. Random tangent. But everybody else, right? Like we see it. I don't use Facebook as much as I used to. I stopped using it for a while just to see what would happen, and then I've picked back up a little bit. But mostly I log in to see when people's birthdays are, and you see a birthday and it's like, ooh, that they're not there anymore, and the last few years I've lost a lot of people I've known, people I'm connected to, whatever, as all of us have. That's not a pity me. And it amazes me how few people think about it. And the article brought up which I'm assuming we'll put in the notes.
Oh yeah.
The one that I thought was interesting, because I've never understood this. People who share accounts, right, with their spouse, their friends, their family, whatever it is, like, hi, it's the Kevin and Denise account or whatever, right?
It's more common than you think.
Yeah.
I actually know several people that do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've asked, I have a family friends, they share an account, and I always find it funny because they will post things lovey-dovey to each other.
yes.
On Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I don't know which one of you is talking right now, but the one will post it and the other one will reply to it, and like it's an entire thread. It's like, you guys live together, talk.
They're probably sitting next to each other on the couch.
Probably, right? Yeah. Like, oh, I'll post this, and but if one of the partners, the people die, the other person is still connected, and I can imagine. I mean, let's be clear. I still have my father-in-law's name and phone number in my phone book on my phone because I don't feel comfortable deleting it. right?
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that they wouldn't want to delete the other person's name on the profile,
Yeah.
right?
It's a really
Yeah.
different use case, right? For people
Yeah.
that the social media platforms haven't really figured out how to address.
Well, according to their terms of service, you're not supposed to do that, right? Uh, you're not supposed to share
Yeah,
accounts.
that doesn't solve the problem.
No,
That's true.
Yeah.
right. And no, but what I mean by it is their terms of service say you can't share it, so there's no reason for them to implement that use case, because while we know that people aren't paying attention and are doing it,
Yeah. But you got to
right?
think that
Yeah.
the when the platform sees so many people doing it a certain way, you figure there's got to be
Yeah.
a way for us to actually monetize this, or at least make it somewhat reasonable, right? Or have it make sense some way. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it is very interesting to me that Facebook is so far ahead of the other social media sites with the full blown memorialization feature, right? Like,
Yes.
uh, here are the two or three people, I think it's two, that you can set up to be able to memorialize you, and that is interesting to me that they've
Yeah.
got that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the different social media companies out there and how they handle this. And like you said, Kevin, Facebook has probably the best out of all the social networks, the best process around memorializing an account. And they all essentially start with providing some form of documentation, right, of someone's death. They actually have a feature where you can turn on that has a list of essentially trusted contacts, that can take over your account essentially after you die. But there is still that process of, someone out of those trusted contacts has to provide, a death certificate, other information. And what else I find fascinating about Facebook is that if you just don't use Facebook for a certain period of time,
Yeah,
they make the assumption that you're dead.
well, because of
And
course you
yeah,
don't want Facebook.
yeah, exactly. And they will start, like, they won't send birthday notifications out anymore
Yeah,
on your behalf, and invite suggestions and things like that, because, well, if you haven't used it for a while, the assumption is you're dead.
I'm curious. The article didn't say, but I'm curious how, if they take into account other sites that use the Facebook login that you don't necessarily use. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to think of the site I was at this morning. I went out to a website that I use, and I had been logged out, as I should be, right, from the system. It's not sensitive, but still. And it gave me the option. I could log in with a local account to the
Mhm.
app, or I could log in with my Google account, or I could log in with my Facebook account. Now, in this case, it was. Why am I blanking on what it was? It doesn't matter. I use my Google account because it's an account tied to my business. We use the G Suite system for that. But Facebook knows who I am. Facebook recognizes my computer,
Mhm.
and so while I didn't use my Facebook login to that system, Facebook has the ability to see that I was on that site and active. I'm curious if that resets that 6 month timer the article talked about.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
right, I didn't
Mhm.
use the site as Facebook, but Facebook would have seen it,
Yeah,
right? Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
that
It's
is interesting.
and as far as I know, none of the other sites do that.
Yeah. Facebook also gives you the option to delete your account upon your death. So,
Mhm.
you could completely vanish,
Yep.
including all your comments and anything you've posted. Or, I don't think it works with like tagging, right? Like, it's not going to reach out and delete somebody else's photo of you, but it may remove the tag of those photos.
I I believe if you're in Europe, it does because of
Oh,
GDPR,
GDPR. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I seem to recall reading. See, the thing that gets me about Facebook removing stuff like that, that's the same thing as we talked about previously about getting blocked by somebody,
Yeah.
right? If you get blocked by somebody, the notifications that you had seen from the interaction go away, which means I know you blocked me because the notification was
Yeah.
there. It's not there. I can no longer see posts by you. I know you blocked me, which in my opinion is the wrong behavior because of abusers. Right?
Yeah.
To me, if you block me, I should have no way of knowing you blocked me unless I actively go look to see if I can find your profile or something. You know what I mean? Like,
I
Yeah.
agree.
They
but
could put a
Facebook makes
little
it
warning,
easy
right?
to
Or
block.
an opt in or opt out to say, hey, if you block this person, all of the notifications will by default be deleted. Do you want that, or do you want to remain stealthy in terms of
Yeah,
allowing that stuff?
that would help. But I'll tell you, from the death perspective, I'm bothered by the idea that it would delete everything. And I know it's a choice. I'm not saying that they chose to do it.
Right. You can
For
choose
the
that. Yeah.
for the survivors, I know I have an entire
Mhm.
directory of voicemails from the audio from family members of Denise's that they
Yeah.
left us voicemails, and so we kept them because that's
Sure.
the recording we have, right? Like
Mhm.
our footprint in this world is so tied to our digital lives that deletion scares me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are you sick and tired of getting your credit card or debit card compromised? Well, it's happened to me in the past, and if it's happened to you, you know it's a time consuming and stressful process to deal with. Look, credit or debit card breaches are happening all the time because there is very little protection out there to prevent your physical card number from falling into the wrong hands. Well, there is a great solution to this problem, and that's called a privacy card, which is a tool that masks your bank account information by generating virtual card numbers. So if your virtual card number gets compromised, your real card number won't. And on top of that, you can control all of those reoccurring online payments by deciding who can charge your card, how much, and how often. And the best part, you can pause or close out virtual card numbers at any time, which means you have total control over all of your online subscription and reoccurring payments. And right now, new privacy customers will get $5 to spend on your first purchase. So go to privacy.com/shared security right now to sign up and take back control of your online payments.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture. But your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring, static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
So talking about the other social networks, Twitter has no tools for transferring an account or its data when someone dies, which is a little surprising. But they just don't have anything. Instagram, which is ironically owned by Facebook,
Yeah,
they can freeze a deceased account, but they don't allow anybody to manage it like Facebook does.
Yep.
So you think about that. Apple, so they are actually coming out with more features in iOS 15, which would allow users to, basically assign a legacy contact similar to Facebook. And apparently, Apple has had a huge problem with this because things get tied up in their system for years if family members request, things to be deleted. So,
well, and I would imagine that the Apple stuff is so much more significant
yeah,
because unlike Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, the Apple machine is what you run your life on.
yeah,
So
that's right.
you know, getting into content like
Pictures and
if God forbid something happened to Denise or one of my kids,
yeah,
I don't have access to their contacts to
No,
know, like some of them I know, but there's so
Yeah.
many friends of Denise's that I don't have,
Yeah.
you know, Jessica's phone number. I know who she is. We've had, we've seen each other or whatever, but if I had to reach out to her to tell her something happened, I don't know how I'd do
Yeah, it's
that.
an interesting
Um,
problem. You wonder, it must be a difficult thing for the platforms to bring up, especially to young people, right? Like, hey, you know what?
yeah,
We'd like to be
you're not
proactive
going
on
to live
this,
forever.
but you're not going to live forever.
yeah,
Just saying.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think this ties back. We've talked about previously on this show and elsewhere about you know passwords in general, right? Like when you die,
Mhm.
what happens to your computer, and what happens to people's image of you via what was on your computer? Because I know for a fact I there are people that do things on their computer that they probably don't want their
Yeah.
kid to know, or their right. I still remember years ago, and I laugh about this story constantly. My grandmother died. That's not the part I laugh at.
Hmm.
And we bought a computer for my grandfather, and we got it set up, and we got everything done, and everything else like that. And then I went home, and he lived in Alabama, and he called me one day, and he was very curious because he was afraid that the porn sites would able to charge his phone bill, like in his head, that, or his cable bill or whatever. This was a very long time ago. I don't remember how he connected, but it was a very uncomfortable conversation to have with my grandfather
That
about his porn habits. And I like I can't imagine doing, like, having to log into his computer after he died to find out, right? You know what I mean? Like, which brings up, Jeremiah Grossman's. He just recently printed on Facebook the medical alert bracelet, right? That he
yeah.
bought. That, please delete my browser history, and um,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, it does bring a good question though about passwords to accounts and access to your device when you die. I mean, social media is just one component of that.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've done with my family is we use LastPass for password management,
yep,
and if you buy the family plan, they actually have a mechanism to assign an emergency backup to gain access to your password vault if something like this were to happen, or if you were in a car, god forbid, a car accident, right, and you're in the ICU, and other situations besides your death which would leave you incapacitated. They have a feature that allows for access to that, because like just thinking about passwords, right, to
yep,
accounts and things,
yeah.
that alone could warrant an entire podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, and I've got accounts that I've played with that are in my LastPass that my wife doesn't think about because they weren't important. For example, I have a Robinhood account.
Hmm.
Um, I've not invested in stocks. I got free stocks by signing up and sharing my link, and I've got a little bit of money there, not much, but Denise knows about the account. But I guarantee you that if I die, she's not going to think about
Yeah.
the few $100s that are there. Now, we're in a better position where I would hope that few $100s wouldn't break her afterwards. But
Yeah.
I know, I know people who quote unquote hide money, right?
Yeah.
They move it in different accounts. They've got stuff all over the place. How do you know? And with everything tied to a social media account, because while Facebook isn't what I would think of as a financial services account, I know that I could use my Facebook account to log into Robinhood or
Hmm.
various investment sites and things like that. So it becomes even more important to know how to handle that account.
Wasn't there a site somewhere at one time that was like a dead man switch kind of thing? Like it pinged you every once in a while, and as long as you responded, it,
Yep.
it didn't do anything. And then if you don't respond, it sends an email with maybe your password to LastPass or something, right? To people.
Yeah, I seem to remember.
Oh,
I
interesting.
remember that site, but I seem to remember a story about the site shut down because people started getting hit by spam. Meaning, the ping hit their spam mailbox,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so they didn't
So
respond.
they were dead.
And so it started,
And then it triggered all the
like,
releases.
oh, he's dead.
And you're dead.
That might be a phishing attack because it thinks he's dead and he's not. So let's block
it's a
that.
great idea in
that would
theory.
I'm not dead yet.
Filters.
Not dead yet.
Exactly. You're mostly dead. So the funny thing for me is, I talk about spam filters. Have you guys noticed that things that are obviously spam don't get caught anymore by Gmail, and the things that aren't spam seem to be caught more? Like,
I've noticed that across the board.
I
Even with
use Gmail, so
any kind of email.
I think
it's just, and they're not even subtle.
I think it's a cyclical thing that happens year to year as attackers learn to bypass the rules of whatever spam filters are working against them. Then eventually you see a big flow of messages because they just figured it out, and it's starting to make its way through the hacker circles. So I think it just comes and goes.
It does. I would agree with that. I think you're right. Yeah, the social media thing is interesting. I'm also curious about attacks against social media through that idea to influencers or large accounts, right? I was reading a thread on Twitter the other day about, this person has like a 4 million subscriber TikTok account and they got banned. And then, we can go into all that kind of thing, but I could totally imagine, instead of swatting the people abusing the dead man switch, for the lack of a better term, on these social media sites to disable. And now it becomes one of those things where you have to prove you're not dead, right? And we've always heard those stories, right?
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I will say that if forget social media for a second, if you're building a service that people use, think about this process, right? I know that my bank has a process for it. If something happens to me and Denise goes to ViStar, they have an entire process for her to let them know.
Yeah.
But that's also made easier because she can walk into a branch.
Yeah.
Right. She can walk up to a human and hand them a death certificate and say, "Look at this.
Yeah.
What about your system?"
Not only that, right? I think it's a great thing to do during onboarding, to give the opportunity and let people know how it actually works, and then publish the process somewhere on your terms of service or your website, right? To say, here's how you would have somebody recover.
Well, and I think that publishing is important because I've used Facebook for years. I've spent a lot of time looking at what Facebook offers and what it does and everything else like that. And I didn't know about the memorialization feature until, Tom, you brought it up at some point. Not for this webcast, but for another one. And it was like, oh man, I didn't even know that existed. And yet I review my settings quite often. I go in there and look at now I review them for the opposite reason most people do. Facebook has a habit of turning on privacy features that I don't want. My Facebook profile is 100% public.
It's interesting how they default now to more private.
Yep.
Before that was not the case.
Oh, it was not the case at all.
Well, you know what? I think
it's
a bit of theater, I think, right? Because people are pretty aware of what they post these days. And they've probably seen enough situations where things that somebody posts, is abused or whatever. And I think a lot of people understand the basic privacy settings and are okay with how Facebook decides to do it. But what I think they don't realize is the third party sharing of information, right? When you go into Facebook and you look at the ads, and there's a list somewhere that it shows you all of the sites that have joined the network, right, that has somehow accessed or provided your information, which is different than the settings on what you post. And that's really scary to look at sometimes. There could be 50 or 100 sites that you don't even know about that have shared information about you with Facebook that you could literally go in and turn off.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff, guys. This is a great and I think really important topic to bring up for sure. I was thinking, well, maybe this might be a good topic around Halloween, but
Yeah.
We'll talk about it again then.
no, we'll have something else for Halloween. Maybe
Zombie
Kevin
attack.
will be in zombies, and Kevin will be in costume. Maybe
No, I
during
won't
the
be
whole
in
show.
costume.
Oh, that would
Hey,
be fun. Yeah.
never mind. I was gonna say, are you guys planning on traveling for any conferences anytime in the upcoming?
Probably not the rest of this year.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna be at least 3 or 4.
Okay. What conferences, so our listeners know?
That means people will know where I am. No, I'm actually.
Yeah, you're okay
speaking
with
at
telling them your
GoCon.
phone number, but you don't want them to know where you are.
Yeah, you don't know where you're at in that
Yeah, no, I
conference.
don't want them to know where I'm at. Until I post on Twitter. I'm going to be at GoCon in
Okay.
Michigan.
Yeah.
InfoSec World in Orlando. Security Weekly Unlocked in Orlando. And then there's another one I can't remember. I just got asked to speak at Secure WV, but I'm doing that one virtually because timing just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Oh, actually, I will be at the Cleveland Information Security Summit in October. So I am going to that. I just haven't registered yet, but I do plan on going to that, and it's local. So
yeah.
But it's like how Orlando is local to you, pretty much. So.
Hey, do you remember?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Kevin's going to these because he's close by, right?
No, actually, I got invited to. I'm doing a workshop in Orlando for the InfoSec World and I'm speaking. It's funny. Every time I'm invited down to Orlando, they always talk to me about how they'll handle my travel. And it's like, I'll just drive down. Don't worry. Like,
it's really not that far.
Yeah. It's like, I'll just come down. It's no big deal. It's even less of a big deal.
I've been applying to conferences. I don't think I have any conferences booked at the moment, but I'm actually interested in speaking at some on security awareness and gamification. So just a shout out if any listeners have ideas for conferences they'd like to.
It surprises me that you're not being invited way more often, because you are one of those people that I've always enjoyed talking to and hearing speak, and you have very important topics. Like if you're running a conference and you haven't asked Scott to speak, you're wrong. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Excellent.
And now that you can travel to the US, I think, there's options there. So,
Yeah. If the Blue Jays can go back and forth over the border,
we all need to get together and physically one day.
Yes, we do. We need to pick a conference.
Yep.
And then go.
Right.
So if you run a conference, you want the 3 of us to show up. And I'll throw out there that if you wanted me to, I'll bring Chewy or something and wander around your conference. Because I've done that.
But you have to specify whether or not we're allowed to use Nerf guns. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. No, Chewy doesn't have Nerf guns. I've not built his bowcaster yet.
All right, gentlemen. Well, this was a great episode. We'll end on that note. But thanks again for co-hosting as always. And to our listeners, thank you for listening and watching and subscribing. Much appreciated. And we will talk to you all next month and next week.
Yes.